Now, to practice the concepts of components and using props just a little bit more, let's extract parts of the footer into a new component. So the JSX here inside the footer component is getting a little bit too long. And so I got the idea of taking this part here and extracting it into its own component. So let's grab all of this and cut it, and then we're simply going to create a new component. So we write function, let's call it order, and then all we have to do is to just return that JSX that we just created. All right, now Prettier did not format this because actually our code is wrong now, because here we don't have anything as the first value in the ternary operator. And so let's immediately fix that. So instead of that JSX that we had here before, now what we want is to simply render the order component. So order, and that's actually it. Now React is still not happy with us, and that's because down here, close hour is of course no longer defined. And it makes sense, because close hour is only defined here inside the footer component. But now the JSX that we had here before is gone, and it is in the order component. So how do we give this order component access to this value right here? And I hope that you guessed that the answer is by using props. So as we see here, props is actually also quite similar to passing arguments into functions. So all we have to do here is to create a prop. So let's say open hour. So we can just give it exactly the same name as the variable. So it doesn't have to be like this, but it can. And so then here, let's receive props as a parameter. And then we can simply read close hour from there. And again, this works because we made the prop here exactly the same name as the variable. So if it was prop hours, then here, of course, we would also have to use that, right? But what matters is that it's working just fine. Well, actually, we are not seeing the result there. So let's set it back to 12. And so now, yeah, we're getting the order component rendered there. However, we see that here is a problem. And I notice that's because I actually created a bug. So here we have close hours, but what we passed in is actually open hours. So we're not interested in open, but in close. So this should be close hour, and here close hour, and here also close hour, as we had before. And so now that's fixed. And so that's actually it. So this is how we take a piece of JSX when the JSX in a component is getting a little bit too big, and simply extract it into its own component. And then if that JSX depends on some value that was in the parent component, so like this close hour, then we simply pass it in as a prop. And so this is something that we're going to do all the time when we build or React applications. So not always do we have all the components figured out in the beginning, but instead we start building them, and then when they get too big, we can decide to extract part of them into just another component. And now, since this was the last component that we're going to create in this project, I invite you to take a pen and a paper and to draw out the entire component tree that we just built here. So I think that's going to be a nice small exercise for you to get a better hold of how all the components in this application work together, and yeah, really understand the structure that we built here for this small project. And then once you're done with that, you can just simply move on to the next lecture.